So, in terms of selling things, I feel like there's a lot of different ways to do it. And one of the things when you go to a couple marketing classes, and one of the things that I learned was herpes. Specifically, the pill that you take to lessen the effects of herpes outbreaks, but specifically to reduce the herpes cells so that it becomes less contagious to others. So they, to my understanding, I'm not entirely sure of all the details here, but the general idea here is pretty sound. They come up with this. They weren't really trying to create it as a cure. They just kind of came up with it and they figured out what it did. And they're like, how do we sell it? So they tried putting it on the market to cure herpes. I know it's not a complete cure, but, marketing language, some, technical form of telling people it cures herpes. And people are like, herpes, who cares? The general consensus was, and, probably would have been, that only about 8% of people have herpes. And it shows up, it itches for, a couple of days, it's uncomfortable, and then it goes away. And it doesn't come back all that often. It generally comes out with stress. So every once in a while your junk itches, and then it goes away. And, it's kind of like how right now I just got over being sick. And I'm starting to now feel better, and I will start to get back to my normal rhythm, and I won't even remember being sick. I know that I'm going to be sick again. I know I'm going to get a cold or a flu next year. I typically get strep throat about twice a year. And when I have strep throat, it's the worst thing on earth, and it's uncomfortable. But the idea that you're going to give me something to fix my strep throat, or my propensity to have strep throat, to me, in my mind, especially with all the cures that we have modern like, I'm thinking there might be more harsh repercussions for me taking your cure than actually having strep twice a year. That's just my take. I probably wouldn't grab it. It's not, it's not life-threatening. It's not a big deal to my life. Like, I'm down for a few days twice a year. It sucks, but you go through it. I'm imagining that herpes very much had the same general feeling and consensus towards it. It wasn't really thought of. So, how do you sell a cure to something that people don't care if it's cured? Like, how do you sell a solution to a problem that people don't have? The answer is shame. So I want you to consider this for a second. They started creating the sex ed classes in school. It had very little to do with, teen pregnancy or any of those things. What it really had to do with is being able to show kids, specifically young children. I want to say I went through sex ed in 4th or 5th grade. I think 5th grade, but I've heard it keeps getting younger and younger and younger and younger. So they wanted to be able to show 4th and 5th graders male and female genitalia images with STDs. And not just any STDs. Like, I specifically remember the gonorrhea and all of the pictures that they like, everybody I think still has nightmares about those pictures. So the herpes picture is, you look at that picture and you're like, how does that even stay attached to your body? Like how is that person still alive? You look at that and you're like, oh my God, fear of God, I never want to get that. And then you have what is the childish inclination to, 1, laugh, 2, to make fun, and then you have so-and-so's had, because remember when you're in grade school and you have 3 boyfriends in a week, but boyfriend, basically, I don't even know what that means, you have lunch together or something, or you play tag and you're you're it, and it's cooties, that sort of thing. the general idea that we all have of like grade school relationships that were a thing. And I think a lot of that is actually parents pushing like, you should probably talk to the girls, Jimmy, so that, you know, I can have grandkids one day. And you're like, sure thing, whatever. So then that person gets made fun of for having herpes. And then like in middle school and early high school, you know, the rumors if somebody's got one of these things or so-and-so's got an STD because they're an immoral person or whatever. And this escalates and grows so that eventually when that 8% gets herpes, because 8% of the population will, the person who gets it feels unbearable shame for what they have. There are laws out there that if you knowingly give this disease to somebody else, you are held accountable. So, meaning that you have to have a very uncomfortable conversation to say, hey, look, and I don't have herpes, this isn't about me, but I can imagine you go up to somebody and you're like, hey, I've got herpes. And the other person, who may not have herpes, has no point or frame of reference or context what herpes is, except to go back and think about when they were a kid and they were in class and they saw this picture of the death disease that lives on their junk. And they think, oh my God, that is the worst possible thing. And if we end up mating or having sex or being boyfriend, girlfriend, or having a relationship or getting married, I too am going to get death bumps and be in constant pain and deal with the same shame. So invariably people will, I'm sorry, you seem like a really nice person. I can't deal with that. And you're like, well, maybe there's, maybe we can use protection or barriers or something. And eventually it gets into this idea that maybe, just maybe, if I take this medication, I don't have to tell people. I won't get outbreaks, so they never have to see it. I'm doing my best so I'm not contagious. Maybe I just don't have to tell people. So you, as the people who made this med, have created the shame so that the suicide rates for people with herpes is through the roof. Because of the rejection and the just grossed out, human reaction of like, oh my God, I don't want that. Even though you've generally lied about what that is and given the worst possible case scenario. Okay. And you've basically pushed it underground where you're like, no one will have to know if you just pay for our meds. Meaning that even though you're a reduced chance of transmitting, there's still a possibility that you're going to transmit. So you've now increased the number of potential customers that you're going to now have having this disease. So it's a very gross moral thing that the people who did the herpes medication did. It's morally awful. It's created countless deaths from suicide from people who feel so bad about themselves and so ashamed for having a disease. There's also the connection that it's a choice that you made. It's your own bad choices. And I all understand that from a moral standpoint, but I think that this idea that you're dirty, that you've been made dirty and abashed and ashamed for your morally bad choices. So you are unclean for life. And you will continually have to have this conversation with everyone, or risk lying to people who you assumedly love, since you're, engaging in some sort of loving sexual, relationship with them. So now you're being forced to withhold information that the other person probably wants to know because you don't want the rejection. So just the culture of this, of lying to people, of having that separation of truth from a potential partner, of seeing a partner as someone that you can get something from, but not actually be honest and open and in relation with them, I feel like is a really good understanding of modernity, and where our fears have been manipulated not to give us something that we need, but to make us into something worse.